My name is Anna Sundström, and I am a board member of Solidar, and I would like to welcome you all to the launch event of the European Alliance for a Just Transition. For those of you who are not familiar with Solidar, it is a network of civil society organizations working to advance social justice through a just transition in Europe and worldwide. Solidar is also the initiator of the initiative that we are launching here today, the European Alliance for a Just Transition. Without giving away too much, over the next hour, we will talk about the links between climate action and social justice. You will hear directly from social, environmental, climate networks and movements, as well as political groups and parties active at European level. And we will unveil the alliance and its call for action in the form of a joint declaration. Hopefully, we will manage to entertain you and keep you company while you're having lunch. So before we start, just a few instructions on how to participate in our discussion on just transition today. Join the conversation by posting on Twitter and Facebook, please using the hashtags #DeliverJustTransition and JustTransitionForAll. And do not forget to tag the European Alliance for a Just Transition using the handles Alliance JT on Twitter and Alliance Just Transition on Facebook. I will in a minute pass the floor to Jean-Pascal van Ipperzele, who is a professor of climatology at the University Catholique de Louvain in Belgium, and the former vice chair of IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, United Nations body for assessing the science related to climate change. Please, Mr. van Ipperzele.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you at this launch event for the European Alliance on Just Transition. And I'd like to give you, in a few words, some of the reasons why a just transition in the context of the fight against climate change is needed. And I'd like to start with a 10-word reminder about the situation. It's a 10-word summary of where we are. First 2 words, it's real. Global warming is happening. It's us, because human activity is the main cause. Experts agree on this. There's a very wide consensus, helped by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And they agree, but it has also become visible that it's bad. The impacts of climate change are serious and are starting to affect people, and I should add, ecosystems as well. But the last 2 words are the most important. There is hope. We have the technology, and not only the technology, we have the knowledge needed, at least to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. But how to do this, the manner in which we do this is important, and it's very important that this transition towards a decarbonized economy, towards a more sustainable world, it's very important that this transition happens in a just manner. We're actually using the atmosphere right now as a big free dustbin for our greenhouse gases. It's a little bit as if we had the thermal insulation blanket increasing in thickness and this is what the CO2 concentration increase shown here on the left leads to. You see the increase since 1850. We have increased the thickness of that layer by 50%, and the result is seen on the right. You see here an increase in global temperature by 1.1 degree Celsius over the same period. The latest IPCC report summarized some of the effects of this global warming, of this global climate disruption already. And the two most visible impacts are the increasingly frequent extreme heat periods, which also become more intense. And the same happens for heavy rainfall, with very often, as a consequence, floods. We know that heat waves can kill. They killed, for example, 70,000 Europeans during the summer of 2003. We also know that the increase in global temperature leads to more evaporation, more water vapor in the atmosphere, and more intense rain. And I saw it yesterday when I visited the flooded area in eastern Belgium, which were flooded mid-July by extreme rain, which also affected Germany. It's a total of almost 200 people who died. And the amount of human damage, and I was told about this human damage by, among many other people, by this couple I met in the city of Limburg yesterday, is really hard to imagine if you have not been on site. I mean, I had seen TV reports, articles, but to be there is quite something. You can see here, this is the first level of a house totally destroyed in the city of Pepinster, and this was the level of water. Let's zoom. This is a kid room, and you see what remains of it. The amount of destruction was absolutely impressive. Now, what happens here in Belgium, in Germany, also in North America, in many other parts of the world, in, for example, Madagascar right now, where there's a terrible famine happening to a large extent facilitated by climate change and drought. But it might become much worse if we don't act, much more. The future of climate is literally in our hands. We have the opportunity to do it in a fair manner. We have the opportunity to fight climate change, which is the Sustainable Development Goal number 13 here, while finding as many synergies as possible with the other SDGs. For example, those two here, fighting poverty, eliminating poverty, and eliminating hunger. And I'm really convinced that this needs to be done and that it can be done. So I salute the efforts you will do in the framework of this European Alliance for a Just Transition, and I wish you the best success. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Ypersele, for these comments and for joining us today at this launch event. We're very happy to have you with us.
Let me just then briefly touch upon the reasons and the arguments for Solidar to launch this initiative today. We're, of course, also very happy that so many organizations from all across Europe are also here with us today. So we all know that climate action is now. We need to tackle climate, environmental, biodiversity, and depollution emergencies now. On top of these emergencies, of course, we're also facing social, health, economic crisis, rising inequality and poverty, persisting forms of discrimination based on ethnicity, gender, disability, age, and other grounds, and increasing precariousness of work and inadequate working conditions in Europe and the rest of the world. So, moreover, marginalized and poor people everywhere are overly affected by climate and environmental crisis, despite being the ones contribute least to it. In Europe, social and economic inequalities are being reinforced by the climate crisis, as it has a disproportionate impact on women and the groups that are most disadvantaged in our societies. Rural and racialized communities, LGBTIQ people people with disabilities, the homeless, the people experiencing poverty. It is even more so the case for those at the intersection of these socioeconomic characteristics. To counter climate and environmental emergencies, structural changes to our economies and the way we live, produce, consume, travel, and work are necessary and urgent. Taking fast and radical action now to avert catastrophic climate change, biodiversity loss, and further proliferation of pollution. And an intensified social crisis is not just a moral and political imperative, but as we see it, also an opportunity to rethink and rebuild our societies and economies and put people and planet at the heart of development. By putting in place measures to fight the climate change and the climate crisis, while at the same time actively supporting marginalized people, we can reduce inequalities and create more social and environmental sustainability. Climate action and social justice must advance jointly and simultaneously. Moreover, we must ensure that the transition to climate neutral societies is managed in a way that does not aggravate social inequalities and economic hardship, pushes people out of work, and in doing pile the costs of the poorest and most marginalized. Moreover, a transition to sustainable economies must be strongly supported by communities and workers. So in a moment, I will also pass the floor to Michael Leahy, who is the Secretary General of Solidar, who will also present the European Alliance for a Just Transition, and later on also present the call of action of this alliance.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Anna, and thank you for joining us today. It is my pleasure to address you at this very special event. It's been a long journey, but also very short, and we're happy to been able to assemble this fine group of organizations at the European level. My name is Mikael Leahy, and I'm the Secretary General of Solidar, as Anna said. And it is with great pleasure that we present to you today the European Alliance for a Just Transition. This alliance is an informal and diverse group of organizations active at the European level that have pledged to work together for a just transition. This alliance is born from the conviction that climate action and the fight for social justice are strongly intertwined and must advance hand in hand, and from the realization that we will be able to ensure a socially just transition to climate neutrality in Europe only if social, environmental, and climate networks and movements, as well as political groups and parties, come together to foster this aim. I am very proud to share with you that 25 organizations are already part of the European Alliance for a Just Transition, and they are Por la Solidarité, Open Society European Policy Institute, Foundation for European Progressive Studies, Generation Climate Europe, ourselves, Solidar, Socialists and Democrats group in the European Parliament, SD, Equinox, part of European Socialists, PES Women, Climate Action Network Europe, Lifelong Learning Platform, PES Group, Committee of the Regions, European Economic and Social Committees Workers Group, European Women's Lobby, Young European Socialists, Federation of Young European Greens, Friends of the Earth, Europe, WWF European Policy Office, Greens EFA Group in the European Parliament, European Environmental Bureau, Youth and Environment Europe, European Disability Forum, Social Platform, Party of the European Left, and the European Green Party. Altogether, we have developed a joint declaration, which you can find already now on our website, alliancejusttransition.eu, and that I'm going to briefly present in just a moment. And now I'm very happy to give the floor to our friends and colleagues in the Alliance and their greetings to you all today.
My name is Wendell Trio. I'm the director of Climate Action Network Europe, a coalition of over 180 NGOs fighting dangerous climate change and promoting a healthy planet for all. We are witnessing on a very regular basis the growing impacts of climate change on our daily lives, be it through droughts, floods, or forest fires. And many of these impacts affect the most vulnerable the strongest because they have poor housing conditions, shaky jobs, and a dire health situation. We need substantial action from governments, or these impacts will become extremely disruptive. This is why we need governments to act and set up a just transition away from the use of fossil fuels and towards 100% renewables. We need policies and measures that reduce climate pollution and tackle social inequalities. This is why we strongly support further cooperation between the climate and social movements.
We are so happy to support and get behind this call for action that has been initiated by Solidar on a just transition. We need to all play our part in delivering to ensure that we have a just transition that will ensure the safety and security for our future generations. We are so happy to come behind this call, which brings together leading civil society organizations, social and environmental movements, and political parties to unite behind this great cause. We will only be able to achieve a just transition if we all work together, the various sectors in our society coming together as one to deliver for today's generation and for tomorrow's generation. As part of a just transition, we believe here at Equinox that we have to ensure that our economies and society become more equal, inclusive, transparent, democratic, and diverse. That is the way forward, and that is how we will achieve a just transition.
Hi, I'm Giuseppina from the Lifelong Learning Platform, an umbrella organization gathering organizations from all sectors of formal, non-formal and informal learning throughout Europe and beyond. At the LLP, we believe that a transition to a regenerative, sustainable and fair world should start from creating inclusive and accessible education opportunities. In fact, in order to have a real just transition, we need to focus on way more than only being carbon neutral. We need to focus on the societal issues and on closing the many gaps we built in our societies. Social exclusion is, to this day, a threat to a just transition, as people in low-income families, in rural areas, or in migrant communities, among others, are not given the same opportunities as more privileged citizens. For this reason, a just transition must start from educational institutions. We need to make educational institutions more sustainable and diversify curriculum offers in all sectors of education and in strong cooperation among different sectors and stakeholders in the education field. Can academia learn from Fridays for Future movement about climate action? I believe they can and they should. And I think this is the reason why cooperation is key, both within civil society and with institutions, to ensure continuous learning, share of practices, co-creation of policies, and practice of democracy, which is, or should be, one of the pillars of a just transition.
Bytom in Poland became wealthy centuries ago thanks to its lead and silver mines. Today, however, its economy is based on another sort of mine, coal, and that is a problem. Nearby coal mines have provided income for the townspeople for as long as they can remember. But digging up and burning up any fossil fuel is incompatible with fighting the climate emergency. Many of Bytom local mines have been already closed, just like others across Europe, and the rest will follow soon. Every such closure is great news for the climate, but without the right support, it can be terrible news for the people whose livelihoods it put at risk. At WWF, we believe the climate and nature crisis must be tackled sustainably and fairly. This means ensuring everybody is part of the change and can benefit from a brighter future. The best we can do it is to work together. And this is why WWF is proud to be part of the new European Just Transition Alliance. We will work hard to ensure the path to climate neutrality is also a path to a just, resilient, and sustainable Europe.
Dear friends, my name is Efi Madama. I'm a lecturer at Pantheon University in Greece and Vice President of PS Women. As Vice President of PS Women, I'm proud to announce our participation in the European Alliance for a Just Transition initiative by Solidar. As the Gender Equality and Women's Rights Organization of the Party of European Socialists, PS Women is committed to a just transition for a social and sustainable Europe, a feminist just transition where women are included as active agents of change in a holistic approach to climate action, where a gender equality and social justice perspective is at the center. A just transition is an essential part of our call for a feminist economy for Europe, an economic system that well-being of people and the planet, not profit, is at the heart of policy making. We need a paradigm shift towards a greener, more sustainable and inclusive world. To achieve this, human rights, inclusivity, participation and diversity must be the watchwords, guidelines for the process. The only way to achieve this is through cooperation and solidarity, which is why this alliance is so timely and so crucial. Thank you to Solidar for launching this initiative. And as PS Women, we look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleagues, for these messages of support and analysis. We are so happy to be working together with you. Let me now introduce to you the joint declaration that has been developed with this group of 25 members of the European Alliance for Just Transition. And as both Fanny Perselli pointed out and Anna Sundström highlighted, the ongoing climate and environmental, social and economic crises are interconnected and must be tackled jointly and simultaneously. We can, as Mr. Fanny Perselli said, solve these multiple crises that we face today only if we take immediate, bold and transformative actions at all levels to build a sustainable and safe future for all. Deeply rethinking and rebuilding our societies and economies and putting people and planet at the heart of development. This is our best survival strategy and the only way we will prosper as a civilization. We must deliver a just transition, well-constructed systemic change that is inclusive, leaves no one behind, and protects and guarantees the rights of all. The whole of society just transition must be accompanied by just transitions at all levels of society and within all sectors. Through a just transition, climate action becomes an instrument to reduce social injustice, generate opportunities for the most disadvantaged, and improve people's well-being, quality of life, gender equality, and the general access to rights. Enforcing, what are the principles then of a just transition? By enforcing universal human rights and ensuring meaningful participation of all parts of society, the transition becomes participatory and we are all able to take ownership. To be truly just, climate action must improve the living and working conditions of all people and communities globally, including both the global south and the north. And all actions must be in line with the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. What should we do? We have come up with 8 general proposals. First, we need to reshape our economies to be more equal, inclusive, transparent, democratic, diverse, feminist, collaborative, circular, and sustainable. Second, we need to create a new world of work that offers decent, high-quality, decarbonized, and sustainable jobs for all. Thirdly, plan and act locally to rebuild sustainable and resilient economies, sectors, communities, and cities. Fourth, tackle inequalities and the unequal access to human rights and essential services from an intersectional perspective, allowing everyone to prosper. Ensure that just transition permeates all EU and national policies and programs. We need to have an overarching theme and an holistic approach. Deliver global climate justice and increase international support and global cooperation. This is not something we solve in Europe alone. This is a global issue and has to be tackled as such. And finally, base and assess all policy proposals and progress on existing human rights frameworks and the best available science. Our call stems from us as social, environmental, and climate organizations, networks, and movements, as well as political parties and groups. And we have in this alliance pledged to work together, united behind the call to action to deliver a truly just transition to a social and sustainable Europe. We call on institutions of the European Union, national governments, and other authorities to act now for a just transition for all. This starts with integrating the strong social dimension into all policies and ensuring that they are delivering on the climate and biodiversity objectives. This can only be done through participation, exemplified by social and civil dialogue. We call on the EU to strengthen the social dimension of the European Green Deal as the central framework through which we can drive a just transition in Europe. This is possible with the comprehensive implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights and a strong connection with it also through and beyond its action plan. Moreover, the European Green Deal's international dimension must be strengthened to contribute to the just transition globally by increasing international climate and development finance and ensuring policy coherence for sustainable development for countries in the global south. The recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic that is now taking place at national and European level must be characterized by social progress and innovation and bring deep social change. It cannot be that we bring back what used to be. We have to create a new normal, a new sustainable and socially just normal. And finally, we call on all sister organizations and brother organizations among civil society, political movements, and other like-minded actors at all levels to gather in alliances like ours, locally, regionally, nationally, to act together and demand a just transition. As we are convinced that it is only by working together that we will ensure that the transition to a climate-neutral Europe happens in the first place, and that it leads to fairer, more resilient, sustainable, and prosperous societies. Our time is now. It has to be now. Without further ado, let's hear from another 5 partners to the Just Transition Alliance.
As the European Green Party, we recognize that climate action and social justice are fundamentally linked. We cannot tackle one issue without also addressing the other. Taking action to address the climate emergency, the biodiversity loss, or the unsustainable resource use means we need to rethink and rebuild our societies and economies to put people and the planet first. A more sustainable future not only means leaving no one behind, but actively working to make sure everyone is better off. Finally, to ensure a just transition means that we need to make our best to leave this planet at least in the same conditions as we found it, in order for the next generations to be able to fight for their well-being as much as we have. A just transition will mean a fundamental rethink of our societies. And that means we need everyone to cooperate. Nobody is going to be able to do it on their own. We need a diversity of perspectives and approaches to make sure the transition is holistic. The climate emergency is urgent, and making people's lives better can't happen fast enough. Only by working together can we tackle these problems with the speed needed to guarantee a better, fairer, and more sustainable future for the next generations.
It is a pleasure to be part of the launch of the European Alliance for the Just Transition, a common effort of trade unions and civil society organizations across Europe to bring about a sustainable future. With the quick-paced and human-made global warming, we are definitely facing the biggest challenge. However, we can tackle this challenge, but we cannot leave anyone behind for this. We cannot allow that working people and their families pay the price. Therefore, we have to rebuild our societies and our economies based on social rights, on the rule of law, on collective bargaining, and on a strong social and civil dialogue. Just transition must be the guiding principle for all future European and national policies.
The climate and environmental emergency is an underlying factor of many issues our society faces today. From social, health and economic crises to discrimination and the increasing precariousness of work, we can only address these problems if we act together and if we act now. As the largest umbrella women's organization in Europe, the European Women's Lobby joined the Just Transition Coalition to ensure we put people and the planet at the heart of a sustainable and safe society for all. Environmental issues have always been and are increasingly a matter of human rights, and thus feminist issues, and an integral part of the feminist economic analysis. Together with other members of the European Alliance for a Just Transition, we, at the European Women's Lobby, pledge to work together to deliver a fair and inclusive transition to a more sustainable society where women and men can fully enjoy all their rights.
We need to leave the blind pursuit of profits behind if we want to stop the climate catastrophe, and this is the only way to ensure better paid and with high standard jobs, especially for the future generations. The struggles to protect the planet and to demand social justice are deeply intertwined. The multiple crises we are living show that we need to question our socioeconomic model and to radically change politics. The European left has chosen to adhere to the European Alliance for a Just Transition, reiterating our belief that it is imperative to jointly tackle the climate crisis and the social crisis. If we want to reverse the deterioration of the working and living conditions of most of the population and set up a more peaceful world, what is needed is a social Green New Deal that puts the workers at the center of the transition.
The European Greens welcome the creation of the European Alliance for a Just Transition. Obviously, all societies need to learn to live within the planetary boundaries, otherwise humanity will simply disappear. But also, we need to do this transition in a just way, for many reasons. First, because economic activities will disappear, and it cannot be that those who made their lives within those activities are trapped and become the losers of the transition. And also, this transition happens at a time where social inequality, income inequality, has never been as big in Europe since decades. And you know, producing stuff in a sustainable way costs more than producing them in a dirty way. But we need everyone to be able to afford those services and goods that everyone needs to live a fulfilling life. So we want this alliance because we need to push for a just transition.
Hello, my name is Kira Marie Peter Hansen. I'm an MEP from the Greens and the coordinator in the Social and Employment Committee. And I think it's important that when we discuss climate change and what we can do for the green transition, we need to remember that it should also be just, that we have different possibilities and different privileges in life, and we need to take that into account when we're discussing the green transition. I'm really much looking forward to working with you guys, and from the Greens EFA side, we're committed to making the green transition a just transition as well.
Thank you, friends and partners. I can't express how happy I am and how much I look forward to working with you as well and to guarantee a just transition. We, our alliance, in many ways represent this and embody the importance of mixing both social and climate agendas to be able to guarantee the just transition. And I really look forward to doing this together with all of you. Now for the final group of members of the Alliance and their salutations to this event. And then back to you, Anna, for some final words. Thank you all for joining us today on my behalf. And thank you all on behalf of Solidar joining us today and this Alliance.
It is important to ensure a socially just transition to climate neutrality in Europe. Let's set a path to follow. Every transition develops challenges. By aligning with other members of the progressive family in Europe and other stakeholders, we would be putting everyone at focus, making sure there is social justice at the core, creating protection to workers and communities, and safeguarding social inclusion, ultimately reducing inequalities. Let us get together, share our thoughts, and express our voice. We can achieve more together. Let us be part of the change that is yet to come.
Becoming the first carbon-neutral, zero-pollution continent in the world means we'll have to go through a very deep transformation. We have to build an economy focused on the well-being of people and the planet. We must overcome our fixation on economic growth, and we must decouple well-being from the logic of a more and more. Despite our wealth, we already live in a region with immense inequalities between countries and regions, between high and low income groups, between men and women, between those who hold power and money and those who are marginalized and have very little political weight. A sustainable future is one in which people and nature thrive together. We can only achieve it if all our climate action and environmental protections benefit everyone equally and help to overcome the inequalities in our society. Let's build mobility systems that answer to female needs of safe, low-cost and flexible transportation. Let's make sure racialized communities do not bear the burden of air pollution or waste dumps. Let's make sure all of us have access to green spaces, clean air, sustainable food and affordable green energy. The EB is happy to join hands with social justice, human rights and environmental organizations to advocate for a truly just transition.
I'm Frauke Thies, Head of Climate at OSEPI, the Open Society European Policy Institute, where our main mission is to keep societies open and fair. The transition towards a sustainable economy is urgent. And we are convinced that it needs to be inclusive and just to prevent green issues from becoming the next populist wedge in Europe. We are signing this declaration and joining the European Alliance for a Just Transition because we believe that policymakers need to address the crisis of social exclusion and climate in tandem. And by making the transition effective and just, we have a real chance of changing our socio-economic framework, placing the well-being of people and the planet first.
Pour la solidarité se félicite qu'à travers le pacte vert, ce fameux Green Deal européen, l'Europe se lance enfin dans une transition juste et inclusive. Mais pour que cette transition soit réellement juste et inclusive, il faut qu'un ensemble d'acteurs et actrices s'y retrouvent. En particulier, nous mettons en évidence les acteurs de l'économie sociale et solidaire qui apportent à la fois une vision économique, sociale et environnementale. L'urgence appelle des actes solidaires qui engagent chacune et chacun au niveau économique, social et environnemental. N'oublions pas que avant 2050, il y a 2030 et les ODD. Pour la solidarité a choisi de rejoindre une alliance pour réunir les actrices et acteurs de la solidarité pour une Europe solidaire, juste et inclusive. Cette alliance pour une transition juste et inclusive réunit l'ensemble des acteurs pour être ensemble une force de frappe pour que demain, l'avenir soit meilleur, plus juste, plus inclusif. Ensemble, on y arrivera.
Here at FEPS, the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, the think tank of the progressive political family at EU level, we are very happy to join the European Alliance for a Just Transition, ensuring that we succeed in moving towards a social and sustainable Europe must be a priority for this generation of Europeans. Addressing climate change and other environmental crises, such as biodiversity loss, means that we have to make fundamental changes in our economy. We have to change our systems for energy, housing, transport, finance, and food production. With initiatives such as the European Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package, we have already taken the necessary first steps towards this transformation. Yet, when implementing these changes, we need to ensure that the transition delivers fair and socially just outcomes for everyone. For progressives, the benefits and costs need to be shared fairly. We must ensure that policy changes in matters such as fiscal or industrial policy tackle inequality and guarantee good living conditions, as well as labor and social rights for all. The transition to a socially just economic model capable of respecting planetary boundaries is a complex task, and it needs contributions from multiple actors in our society. This is why we strongly support the initiative of this European Alliance, and we join the undersigning organizations, movements, networks, and political parties in the call to deliver a just transition to a social and sustainable Europe for all.
We are gathered here today for the official launch of the European Alliance for a Just Transition, and for which I want to warmly thank Solidar. Confronted with the acuteness of the climate emergency and the economic and social crisis, we are united here today because our societies need to be profoundly transformed in a just way, or there will be no transition at all. We owe a just transition to the young generation, alerting all of us on the climate emergency and their own future. We owe a just transition to workers and communities already confronted with the numerous damages of climate warming. We owe a just transition to those who already feel left behind and have lost confidence in decision makers. We want a better quality of life and increased well-being for all. We must be inclusive in this process, listen to people, their fears, concerns, dreams, and demands for change. The European Just Transition Alliance is here to ensure that everyone has a say in designing a better future. The S&D Group is, of course, part of this alliance to make a new social contract for all a tangible reality, and we are proud of it.
Thank you so much for your inspiring words and messages. And also thank you so much to Mikael and all of the staff members of Solidar for taking this initiative. Also, of course, thank you to all of you participating in this launch today. Maybe it wasn't intentionally anyhow, because I think his message, the future of climate is literally in our hands, he said, and time for action is now. This is something for all of us to remember and to act on, of course. So before we say goodbye, I'd like to spend a few words on how you can join our call for action. First of all, you can go to our website, alliancejusttransition.eu, and click on the joint declaration button to read the full document. On social media, you can find us at Alliance JT, and this for Twitter, and Alliance Just Transition on Facebook. And don't forget to follow us and to tag us. When you post something on Just Transition, please use the hashtags #DeliverJustTransition and Just Transition for all, so that we make sure to make some noise together. Starting from today, we are kicking off a social media campaign that will last several weeks and that will focus on the main calls of the Alliance. You will see it on social media channels of the Alliance, and please share, retweet, and join our call for a just transition. Lastly, if you want to know more about the Alliance, or if you're interested in being a part of it for your organization to join, please contact us at the address that you all see on the screen, and reach out for Andrea Casamenti at solidar.org. So that's all for now. Thank you so much to all of you who have watched the live stream or participated, and for all of you who have been with us this afternoon. And a big thank you, of course, once again to all the member organizations of the European Alliance for a Just Transition for your dedication to the topic and for your contribution to the joint declaration. This launch event and the upcoming campaign, this is when the work starts. We look forward to continuing working with all of you, of course. Time for action is now. See you next time. Bye-bye.